The Courtroom Showdown, a high-stakes legal battle. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Pam Bondi, a seasoned prosecutor, faced off against Judge Howard Gates. Bondi had seen her fair share of high-pressure cases, but today felt different. She knew that the stakes were higher than ever. The case involved a high-profile government corruption charge that could send shockwaves through the political establishment. The defendant, a wealthy real estate developer with powerful political connections, was accused of misdirecting public funds into his private ventures. The evidence was undeniable, and Bondi had prepared meticulously for this moment. But she hadn't expected the hostility that emanated from the bench as soon as she entered the courtroom. Judge Gates, notorious for his sharp tongue and unpredictable rulings, barely acknowledged Bondi as she approached the plaintiff's table. Instead, he flipped through a file slowly, purposefully creating an uncomfortable silence in the courtroom. It was clear from the start that he wasn't going to make this an easy trial for her. Without even looking up, Judge Gates finally spoke, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ms. Bondi, I assume you've prepared something of substance today, or should we just skip ahead to the part where you waste my time?" A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom, mostly from the defendant's legal team, but Bondi remained calm. She had faced worse. "Your Honor, I believe the evidence will speak for itself. This case involves the misuse of taxpayer dollars, and it is my job to ensure the facts are presented accurately." Gates leaned back in his chair, feigning boredom. "Taxpayer dollars, right? As if that's never been the foundation of a frivolous case before," he said dismissively. Bondi clenched her jaw but kept her tone steady. "Respectfully, Your Honor, I would hardly call felony corruption charges frivolous." Their eyes met for a brief moment, his cold and calculating, hers unwavering. But before she could continue, Gates cut her off. "Mrs. Bondi, spare me the lectures. Just get to the point. I don't have all day to entertain whatever grandstanding you have planned." A murmur spread through the courtroom, and Bondi could feel the shift in the air. It wasn't just a tough judge, something personal was going on. She took a deep breath, recalibrating herself. Gates was trying to rattle her, trying to get her off balance, but she wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. She picked up a folder from the table and opened it. "Your Honor, I'd like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit A," she said, pointing to the financial records projected on the screen. Gates interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. "Do you always insist on drowning people in paperwork, or is this just your way of compensating?" The room shifted. The defense attorney smirked, and a few reporters exchanged glances, but Bondi didn't flinch. She'd learned long ago how to handle men like Gates, men who thrived on intimidation. She paused for a moment to make a statement without saying a word, then placed the folder back on the table, clasping her hands together. "Your Honor, if you prefer to continue making this personal, I'm happy to request a recess so we can address any professional concerns you may have." The words were subtle but pointed, a warning that she wasn't going to back down. Gates's lips curled slightly. Was it amusement, annoyance, or something else? It was hard to tell, but one thing was certain. He wasn't done yet. "Oh, I don't have concerns, Ms. Bondi," Gates sneered. "I just know a weak case when I see one." This time, the response wasn't just murmurs, it was gasps. A few people in the gallery whispered under their breath. This was not how a judge was supposed to conduct a hearing. Bondi could feel the weight of the room shifting as the eyes moved between her and Gates. But she didn't engage in the shouting match he wanted. Instead, she adjusted her blazer, straightened her papers, and looked him dead in the eye. "I suppose we should let the evidence do the talking," she said calmly. As she spoke, Bondi noticed something else. Gates wasn't just arrogant or condescending. There was something deeper in his expression. It was as if he had something to hide. And that's when Bondi realized this wasn't just about courtroom theatrics. It was a calculated attempt by Gates to undermine her in front of the entire courtroom. But why? What was he trying to protect? Bondi pressed on, determined not to be intimidated. Your Honor, these documents show a clear discrepancy in the funding allocations. The defendant's company received nearly triple the amount approved in the original budget, and none of it was accounted for in the state records. She gestured toward the projection screen, where the financial records were displayed. Gates cut in, his voice dripping with disdain. I hate to interrupt your presentation, really I do, but I think we've seen enough numbers for one day. Bondi glanced at him, then back at the screen. He wasn't even trying to hide his contempt. Your Honor, with all due respect, these numbers are the foundation of the case, she said, her voice unwavering. Gates scoffed. And yet I fail to see anything that justifies wasting the court's time with them. Wasting time, Gates said again, as if trying to bury the case before it could even begin. Bondi heard the prosecution team behind her shifting, exchanging uneasy glances. They felt it too. Something wasn't right. But Bondi tightened her grip on the file and flipped to the next page. Your Honor, I'd like to submit a motion to deny... Before she could finish, Gates interrupted again. Let's be honest, Ms. Bondi. This entire case is based on speculation, a little creative accounting, and suddenly you're crying corruption. The defense attorney didn't need to speak. Gates was doing all the work for him. Bondi exhaled slowly and stood tall. Are you refusing to allow my motion before hearing its contents? She asked, her voice sharp. Gates leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench, a smug expression on his face. I'm refusing to indulge this circus act any longer, he said. The courtroom felt heavy, the tension almost unbearable. Bondi caught the eye of one of the jurors, an older woman who was watching the drama unfold intently. Bondi squared her shoulders and proceeded with her next piece of evidence. As Bondi displayed more financial documents, she noticed something change in the room. Gates, for the first time, wasn't leaning back in his chair with arrogance. His hands were clasped, his expression tight. Something was different. Something was shifting. Bondi approached the bench cautiously. I'd strongly suggest you reconsider the direction you're taking here, Judge Gates, she said, her voice calm but firm. Gates leaned in slightly and murmured just enough for her to hear. Some fights aren't worth having. Bondi, undeterred, responded, I don't scare easily, Judge Gates, before walking back to her seat. The tension was escalating. Bondi knew that Gates wasn't just being biased. He was trying to protect something, or someone. She continued her presentation, refusing to back down, until she hit him with the next bombshell. The defendant's company had submitted falsified financial records with the judge's approval signature on them. Your Honor, would you like to explain why your signature appears on an unauthorized financial transaction involving the defendant? She asked, her voice steady and calm. The room erupted in gasps as Gates's face turned pale and his hands clenched into fists. Gates attempted to dismiss the evidence, claiming it was inadmissible, but Bondi was ready for this. This document was subpoenaed by my office, Your Honor, she said coolly, and it will be considered in this court. The room grew even more tense as Bondi crossed her arms, watching the judge carefully. Then, in an unexpected move, Bondi pulled out a small recorder and pressed play. A voice crackled through the room, unmistakable and deep. Take care of her. Make sure she doesn't get her hands on those ledgers. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Gates didn't move. He couldn't. The defense attorney blinked, his composure slipping. I don't know where you got that recording, Gates said weakly, but Bondi wasn't finished. The real question is, who were you talking to? She asked, her voice icy. The defense attorney, visibly nervous now, avoided eye contact. Bondi wasn't done yet. She presented a wiretap transcript, corroborating the damning recording. The room felt like it had shrunk, the weight of the evidence pressing down on everyone. Officer Reynolds, would you kindly read the highlighted section aloud? Bondi asked. The courtroom was on edge, every eye watching as the bailiff read the damning words. We'll take care of her. If she gets anything solid, I'll make sure it never sees a courtroom." The sound of metal cuffs snapping shut was like a gunshot. Judge Gates was arrested in front of the stunned crowd, his years of authority crumbling away. As he was escorted from the courtroom, Bondi remained seated, her expression neutral. This was about justice, not revenge. "This is a disgrace," Gates muttered, but Bondi stood, straightening her blazer. "Not anymore," she said, her voice unwavering. As the defense attorney and the wealthy developer sat in shock, it became clear that their safety net had vanished. Bondi turned her attention to the defendant, Charles Lawson. "Would you like to continue with today's proceedings, or would you prefer to discuss a plea?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Lawson hesitated, clearly unraveling. "This is a witch hunt," he muttered. Bondi gave a small smile. "No, Mr. Lawson, this is justice." She allowed the weight of the moment to sink in before adding, "I think it means the system still works. No matter how powerful someone thinks they are, the truth will always catch up to them." The courtroom had shifted. The walls that once protected the powerful had cracked, and Pam Bondi had just sent a clear message to everyone watching: no one is above the law.